Some of your favorite actors have used Backstage to kickstart their career. Denzel Washington, Al Pacino, Viola Davis, Chris Evans, that's Captain America. And all you have to do to be just like Captain America is go to backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a 30-day free trial. That's 30 days of access to thousands of casting notices uploaded daily. Subscribe to Backstage today, and again, use code ENVELOPE at checkout, ENVELOPE, for free.
People really responded to elements of Bridesmaids. A lot of us knew each other already, and so we had chemistry. And I think that there's like this invisible quality to that you can't put your finger on, and that people feel like you want to reach out and touch it. You know, there's something about it. And then there's those other times where there is no chemistry and you got to fake it till you make it.
Welcome to In the Envelope, the Actors Podcast, where the biggest names in film, television, and theater help craft a complete guide to the creative life. I am your host, Backstage Senior Editor, Vinnie Mancuso, and I am thrilled to be joined today by one of the funniest people on earth, the great Maya Rudolph. Many of you probably first met Maya on Saturday Night Live, which she joined in 2000, and over 7 seasons established herself as one of the most gifted comedic performers and, more importantly, impressionists of an entire generation. That, of course, launched her to an equally successful career in films like Bridesmaids, voice work, and shows like Big Mouth, and most recently, season 2 of the incredibly funny Apple TV series Loot from creators Matt Hubbard and Alan Yang. Maya executive produces and stars as Molly Wells, a woman working to give back the majority of her $87 billion fortune. It's so funny. And it's airing right now. If you're listening to this live, check it out. But for now, if you've ever just been even a little interested in comedy, whether it's performing or writing or anything, you're just interested in the craft, this is the episode for you. It's an absolute masterclass on being funny from one of the best. Let's get right into it. Here is Maya Rudolph. Maya, how's it going? It's a wonderful to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Everything's fine. Yeah, that's usually a stock answer because, like, you know, you're working.
It's been a long day, but it's not been a bad day.
I love that.
It's getting loud, so I hope that that's okay. It's like sirens and.
That's okay. I mean, we've had dogs, we've had sirens, we've had, you know, it's just, it's flavor, it's character, it proves that we are talking, this is real life. And if it's too bad, we'll just edit it out. But it seems fine to me. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I have to say congratulations on Loot Season 2. One of the funniest shows out there right now. So good.
Thanks.
And I also have to say congratulations on a successful return to SNL not too long ago. It was about a week and a half ago at this point. Very, very wonderful to see you back. I want to talk about all of that. I want to talk about everything that's happening now. But because, you know, this is Backstage, we love to see the journey and all that. I do want to, you know, just start off by going back because, you know, I'm watching SNL. I'm seeing you walk through that hallway, you know, and it's a return. It is the return of Maya Rudolph. Do you remember the first time you were in that hallway?
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first show. Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't remember a lot about it because I was like white knuckling it. But yeah, of course I do. I mean, it was my lifelong dream to be there. And hard to believe that I was there. In my first show, I didn't know if I was actually in the cast yet. It was sort of a trial period. So I was just felt very lucky to be there and was hoping I'd get to come back. Yeah, I think it was the end of the 25th season of the show that I came.
And, you know, when you sort of have those moments where you're returning to something and there's those years in between, you know, what do those years in between mean to you, you know, as an artist? You know, is that something you're aware of, or is it just, you know, this is another job?
I mean, that place is so specific. I mean, Saturday Night Live, I don't think will ever be just another job for most people that work there. It's not like anything else. And it was so transformative for me. I had a positive experience there, and it really informed a lot of the way that I work today. And, it helped form a lot of the creative relationships I have in so many of my personal friendships, and allowed me to sort of find a little bit of my voice and how I like to work, and gave me this skill set, that I never had before. And then this sort of commonality with all these other people that worked at this very particularly special and specific place. And so it feels like a legacy that you're a part of. And it feels like just this wonderful luxury to be from this place. And I feel such honor to still call it home, and to be able to go back to something. It's also just an incredible feeling to go back to something that the building is exactly the same, and things within it have changed. They've, some offices in the back are like part of it now that weren't there before. And like, we didn't used to use that down the hall, and now that's open up. Or, hey, there used to be a wall here. Like, that kind of stuff goes on. And I find that endlessly fascinating. But I just, I found myself going like, we used to do this here, we used to do that here. And it was mine at one time. And so that felt it feels good to go home. It doesn't always feel good to go home. I'm not speaking for everyone. Everybody's experience is different, but it felt really good to go back. And also, there's times when I'm home watching the show where I feel like, oh, I want to be there. I wish I was there. There's other times where I feel like, oh, that looks so hard. I'm so glad I don't have that schedule anymore. It just depends. But it was such an exciting opportunity to go back, because I knew that, and also specifically for Mother's Day, it's just such a big honor. And also for me, it was like, yeah, now I'm a mom and I'm celebrating Mother's Day, and that's crazy too. And it was very cool. Very, very, it just feels very fulfilling personally, such a personal achievement.
Absolutely. You mentioned, how, you're sort of molded by the time there. And it's a very specific experience being on Saturday Night Live. It's something that you sort of throw yourself into. We talk to a lot of different types of actors, a lot of different types of performers, and we often talk to sketch comedy artists. And it seems to me that is a medium that sort of attracts very driven people. Well, it's people who want to throw themselves into it, people who want to sort of, put in the time. What do you think it is about the medium of sketch comedy that sort of attracts particularly driven people?
I don't know that I would categorize myself as particularly driven. So it's interesting to hear that. Because when I'm doing it, I feel like, oh, this is what I do. I don't know that I feel the same confidence with other things. Mm-hmm. So I guess in that respect, it creates that drive specifically for the live performance aspect of it. There's just so few opportunities to have that experience, and especially in television. It came out of a time where television was live, and now that's one of the only live television shows left. So I don't know. It's interesting because it's interesting to hear it from your perspective. Mm-hmm. I think I am driven to the things that I'm interested in, but the things I'm not interested in, I ain't driven.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I take medication for that, but it's
I probably should, but I think it's always endlessly fascinating to me as I continue to work throughout my career, like what still excites me and what doesn't, and where I feel more comfortable and where I don't. And yeah, I think sketch comedy, I used to watch the show and think that was just comedians, but sketch comedians are a very specific set of people, just like stand-ups are specific and impressionists are specific. And all of those different types of people work at the show, but they all kind of bring different things. I know for me, being a sketch performer, I'm sort of looking at it as like a group sport, and I like being on the team. I don't need to be the team captain. I just want to be part of a really good team, because to me, that's where I feel funniest. I'm not interested in it being all the spotlight being on me. I prefer the comedy that creates layups You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm giving sports analogies and I'm the last person that's doing that, but just this idea that I know what I'm going to get from you. And so I set you up to get that. And that just informs the comedy. And I think it just elevates and builds from there. And that's kind of this wonderful hidden, benefit of being a sketch performer. And then so many of us came out of Second City, or for me, the Groundlings, and brought that to the show when we were there. And so, it's just this incredible gift that keeps on giving that we're able to continue to use.
Just sort of hearing you, talk about the inner workings of how this particular form of comedy works and the way you like to do it and, the way you've learned to do it. So I'm always very interested when we talk to comedians and people that are just particularly funny. And I guess this is just a good place to start for everything I want to ask afterwards, because it's something that we get all kinds of answers to. And it's just a basic question of, do you think that someone can learn to be funny? Is it a skill that if you don't have it, you can acquire it? Or does there have to be something in the mix that is a bit natural?
Yeah.
Perfect.
But I think that I've learned, I've definitely learned. I feel like I've gotten funnier. I feel like I've gotten better at it. I've also just gotten better at recognizing my strengths or my voice. Yeah, some people aren't funny.
Honestly, that is maybe my favorite answer to that question, because I think the reason we get so many answers to it is because people try and talk around it, when really maybe the answer we've all experienced people who just aren't funny, and it's wild to sort of experience, because you're like, they have no idea that, but I don't know. I also think there's variations within that answer, because the more and more I look at comedy, I think of it as more of almost like a language, or like the same skill set as being a musician. Like, it's just, there's something about it that is innate, and that yes, you can teach yourself to play an instrument. That doesn't mean that the music is good. You know what I mean? So like, there's comedians who I don't find funny, but they're comedians and they have careers, and there's so many types of comedy, so I guess there's variations within all of that. But I think the common denominator for most funny people is that thing. Yeah. They just, yeah. And who knows where the hell it comes from. For some people, it's nature. Some people it's nurture, it's environmental. Most of us, it's our black, dark hearts, all of that stuff. But some sort of horrible trauma, PTSD, you name it. But there's that survival element to it. That's someone who's taking something painful and creating something beautiful out of it, or maybe it's less cathartic for us, but more for other people when you get that sort of relief through comedy. You mentioned the it is a bit like music, and I think that's really interesting, because I do want to ask you, when I watch something like Loot, or I watch you on Saturday Night Live, or I watch you, particularly in stuff like, even like Big Mouth, where it's a voice performance, so much of what makes it funny is a particular raise or lower, and there's just it's a musicality to the delivery, and it's something that's hard to explain. But you come from a musician family, and music is a big part of your life. What is that sort of intersection of music and comedy for you? Like, when you think of the stuff that is baked into it becoming natural for you, where does music fit into that?
It's a great question. I don't know. I when I was doing the Groundlings, when I was sort of figuring out what kind of stuff I wanted to create, I didn't include music because it felt a little bit too close to the bone, or I was just like, I already do that. Like, and I wasn't even really realizing like how much a part of me is music, and that's a pretty normal part of me, and just like anything in your life, if your parents were both teachers, that's a world that you would be very familiar with. And education might be a big part of your comedy routine or whatever. But I had a teacher at the time that told me to embrace it. And I did feel like it allowed me to explore what it was that came naturally, and also I found funny, or the things that I was interested in creating. I think the two are such interested, like-minded cousins, that I've always loved seeing the intersection between musicians and comedians, and musicians that want to be comedians and comedians that want to be musicians. And sometimes they do both, and sometimes they're just, mutual admiration society. But that it's this cool thing that's kind of hard to, it's sort of hard to describe. That a lot, and I do feel when I say that comedy is a language, I do feel that some of it is in the ear, and I don't know why, but I know that that's certainly what musicians are probably picking up on and relating to. And it's hard. It goes back to your question about like, can people learn to be funny? I don't know that it's necessarily something that people can learn to be inherently, just like you witness a musician who's so gifted, you can't understand how they can create music like that. So I don't know. I think maybe one day some scientists will figure it out, but I do think it's one of those natural things, and then everybody sort of takes it from there.
It is, like you said, it's something that's very hard to describe, because it's even true of like just great acting, and even if it's not comedies, there is a musicality to it. It is just like, and this is what makes this podcast kind of hard talking about acting, is like if you ask that person, they'd be like, that's just, that's how I did it. That's how it came out of me. That's how it felt natural. There's no 1 + 1 = 2 as to what the delivery of a line is that makes it funny or makes it hit or something like that. It is just like you said, it's in your ear, I guess.
I think it's in your ear. I think musicality is the right word, because like I never set out to do impressions of people. I never found myself to be an impressionist. And I remember getting to Saturday Night Live, and sometimes writers would write something for you where you were doing an impression of someone, and I didn't really have any prepared. And I think that my ear has always been able to pick up on the way people speak. And I think that comes from a musicality. I notice it, with languages too. Some people that are great with languages have these musical ears. So I don't know. It's all very fascinating to me. I find it very interesting, and I just feel it, but I can't describe it.
Yeah. We offer no hard answers here, but it's interesting to.
But if I do crack it, I want a prize.
And please let us know. Let us break it that we've discovered the secret to comedy. We will publish it Backstage.
For sure.
You mentioned you didn't set out to become an impressionist, but it's become something that you're very known for. I'm curious, because another thing I've noted that I found really interested in is you graduated UC Santa Cruz, which I think a bachelor degree in photography. What do you think, and even if it didn't contribute much, what do you think that sort of early desire to document people has folded into your career as a performer, as an actor? I've talked to a couple actors who got into photography just because they wanted to become a documenter of people.
I ended up with photography major just because they didn't have a theater, like a physical theater. And so I think I really meandered through college, figuring out what I had done so much theater growing up in school that when they didn't have that, I just was trying other things. And I think I knew I wanted to continue to do theater, but I think I was just going to college to go to college and have that experience. So it also just was a part of me. I've always, I just make art too. Like I paint and I draw and make stuff. And so it was just a comfortable area. And who knows, maybe it felt cool at the time. I think I was really interested in like fashion photography. And I remember I had a very German photography professor who, when they asked us to bring pictures in, I brought in, some tears from Vogue. And she said, these aren't real photographs. And they were Stephen Meisel and these beautiful David Sims and these beautiful fashion photographers. And I thought it was incredibly creative and exciting. And it all kind of is in the same soup in my head, but I was just waiting to be done so I could go to a theater. Really. At the time, my best friend and I were, she invited me to start a band. And so I did have that performance bug outlet. We had a band in college. And so I was sort of like, all right, I'll stay. I'd wanted to leave. And then my dad said, stay. So I stayed and I had friends, it was just like I was learning how to become a person, be social. But to me, the photography is just an element of many of the little things that like hopefully when I get tired of being in front of a camera, I can just keep creating things. I like creating things, but I never thought about it as documenting people, which I find really interesting. It's like somebody says something once and you go like, oh, I never thought about it. Because it is very voyeuristic if you're, taking pictures of other people. But I think it was more just like the visual, the actual image.
Yeah, I think it all, you mentioned you just like to create things, and that was just part of it. I think it all just sort of adds up. If you're somebody who likes to create, and if you don't become an expert in something, but you just like to sort of tinker, it all adds to this idea of the whatever is making it feel natural to you when you are then in front of a camera and have to perform.
Yeah, I used to be nervous that like if I wasn't acting, I was like, well, I need to have a job or do something else. Like, no, I need some time to draw.
Yeah.
I need a little time to make stuff too. And the idea of creating things not for work sounds exciting too.
I think that is a through line that I hope comes through all these episodes. Is if you're doing it at 100% of the time, it's probably not going to work out for the long haul. Doing this, I have seen you say that once you decided you set your sights on I'm going to become a comedian, I better start writing your own material. When for you did it feel like the stuff that you were creating for yourself became sort of professional quality? Do you remember like the first, even if you don't remember the very first thing you created that felt professional quality, do you remember what that transfer felt like? Or was it just a gradual, you started, kept at it, and then it just...
Well, I thought that I needed to write stand-up. So I tried to write stand-up and that didn't go very well. So I never did it. So it wasn't until I got to the Groundlings and I really did have my sights set on Saturday Night Live that I was able to work in the writing lab and start to create characters and start to actually write. I'd never written before that, but I really thought for many years that being a comedian was being a stand-up. And I quickly learned, probably because I knew throughout my entire body that I was not a stand-up and I did not want to be that vulnerable and naked on stage. So I quickly quit that idea immediately.
What do you think the divide is there? I mean, it is true that, being a stand-up, you are just sort of presenting yourself and being like, here I am to make you laugh. Here's my life. Here's my stories. It does feel like, any live performance sort of has that nakedness. So what is the thing in between that makes you more comfortable doing one or the other?
I think I probably feel more comfortable doing it now as opposed to when I started, but that's probably because I've had to endure so much of putting myself, my actual self out in front of people talking. Sketch and improv is, it's never you. And so you have the luxury of hiding behind this wonderful armor of being someone else. And, whether it's a costume or a wig or a voice or just being someone else as opposed to you and bombing as yourself, which I'm sure is a real bummer.
Feels more like a personal, like you're personally disappointing.
Yeah, and I think also just like this, I don't know if I shouldn't say this because I'm not a stand-up and I don't know that all stand-ups agree with this, but for me personally, I feel far more comfort in speaking in my own voice than I used to, just from years of having to do it. But I don't think this is something that I would have felt comfortable to do 20 years ago. But I think that's also because I've had to endlessly promote projects and things where you find, at least for me, I have found a way to talk publicly, still with a little bit of protection for self. I feel like I never had the desire to completely reveal all of my, bumps and bruises. I felt like that would be very painful to like, then what? Then you I don't know. That just seemed so hard. And life's hard enough. Like I don't need to create more problems for myself. But I think it would be more fun now. And I don't pretend to be a stand-up, but I do find the idea of it kind of exciting and could be really fun. But that's because I just feel more comfortable probably in my own skin, or maybe just hearing my own voice. Not on like an answering machine kind of thing, but just trying to be funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get it. I have to listen to my voice a lot doing this job, and it is still torture after all these years.
It sucks real bad.
It does, but we sacrifice for the things that we do. I do want to talk a little bit about bombing. It's one of the many things that are so hard to understand about becoming a comedian and becoming just any sort of live performer. I think one of the hardest things to understand is living in that sort of, when something's not working, and learning from it, and sort of, you hear people talk about embracing it. What position has bombing, has being in something that is not working, sort of contributed to? Again, we go back to this sort of the thing in your head that makes this feel natural to you. How has bombing helped shape that into something?
Well, it's it's that biggest fear you have, and then it comes true and you've survived. I think the most bombing I've experienced was at SNL when you put up a sketch address and it tanks so royally that all you can do is laugh. And we used to call those sketches Shit Can Alley, and we would say like, "Oh, they put my sketch up at Shit Can Alley." There was this side of the studio that was underneath the bleachers, so people couldn't really see you, and we always knew that was inevitably going to die a painful death. And then we would watch them back sometimes and just laugh our asses off at just how horribly embarrassing it was to bomb. But then you've survived, right? It's like when you're trying to talk someone out of a panic attack and you say like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, okay, imagine that coming true. Like, so it happened. So you bombed, whatever. Like, you're still alive. Yeah, I guess. But like I said, I've never done it telling stand-up, being a stand-up. So that might just send me
experience,
never to return. Yeah.
It does feel just a little bit when it's just you standing on the stage. But I mean, again, to me as an outside observer, it all feels like you said, it is the thing you don't want coming true. But I do feel like it is that sort of horror movie thing where it's like you get the experience, you live through it, and you're alive. And it makes it easier to do again. And the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time.
Yeah. I just don't like when I'm the only voice in the room and there's no other sound and no one's responding. That sounds like
a nightmare.
Panic attack nightmare come true. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another thing I want to ask about that, again, we sort of get a lot of answers to, and this is for acting and comedy, but I do want to talk about it specifically in comedy, is the idea of chemistry and whether or not it is real. Whether or not it is a byproduct of being good at your job, or if it's a tangible thing. And, when you think about chemistry, I think of watching something like Loot, and you have, it's sort of an ensemble, and you have to have different chemistry with Joel and Booster as you do with Michaela J. Rodriguez. It's sort of like, not only do you have to have chemistry, you're throwing balls in different directions. So at what juncture does that sort of come into working with someone? Is that something you work out, or is that something that comes naturally, or does it exist at all for you?
I totally think it exists. I mean, I think it's, when I hear that, the first thing that comes to mind is like why people like really responded to elements of Bridesmaids. As I remember thinking like, oh, we already, we have, a lot of us knew each other already. And so we had chemistry. And I think that there's like this invisible quality to that you can't put your finger on, and that people feel like you want to reach out and touch it. There's something about it. It absolutely exists. And it's either something that you can create, or that, when you have a long-standing relationship with someone, obviously you can recreate every time, or it's just naturally there. And then there's those other times where there is no chemistry and you got to fake it till you make it. But it absolutely exists in so many of the work experiences I've had. And especially I think when you have the opportunity to create with someone that that's such a luxurious part of it. That's such an added bonus, and the thing that you can't really explain, but it's right there. And so I feel like people react so positively to chemistry, and it's this wonderful element that's just hard to put your finger on, but when it exists, and it's there.
Yeah, I think it is another thing. It is another part of the job that it's very hard to put into words, because when you can break down chemistry, but really it's one of those, well, I was watching it and it was obvious. I saw it. And what'd you see? It's like, it was chemistry. It feels tangible, but you can't put it into words.
It's kind of like a pheromones kind of thing where you're like, it's there, but I can't prove it, but I know it exists. And it's one of those fun perks of being human, you know?
Absolutely. I don't want to keep bringing up these intangible subjects that are impossible to describe, but I am curious, and we can talk specifics about Loot or any other projects of, when there's a moment that requires that right delivery of knowing when that take is probably the right take, but it's just not there. What does that feel like, on the day? How do you know when you're not on the right track, and how do you know when you're getting on the right track?
It's always different. I mean, I don't know, because sometimes I'll doubt myself and certainly think that we didn't get it. Someone says, we got it. And I'm like, now I'm doubting you. We didn't. And I'm like, I don't believe you. Or I think you have bad taste. It's subjective. It's hard. I think back to SNL days, I had Mike Shoemaker, one of our producers, say, it's really, because I had a really hard time coming from the Groundlings to SNL because we were writing sketches, and I felt like I was writing what I knew, and it didn't feel like it was right for the table read. And so I felt like, I need to change the way I'm writing. I need to write for this room, and every room is different, which is why I find it so hard to just like come into, it's like people want you to like come to these like award shows or whatever. And it's like, I don't know what the room is. I don't know like what the vibe is going to be. But Mike Shoemaker said, write what's funny to you. If you're laughing while you're writing it, and if you're laughing while you're creating it, then people will laugh. And I find it to be something that I come back to a lot, because I feel like it's so easy, especially in a situation like Saturday Night Live, where you're just trying to get your stuff on so that you can be on the show. And you're writing what you think people want to see as opposed to what's funny to you. And there is something about that when it's funny to you, or when you're making the person you're with laugh, there's something infectious about that. And I just think that can translate. I mean, you're right. This is another one of those mystery phenomenon things, but I think it's all part and parcel of the same world, Let's just say it's magic. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, we've gotten existential already.
We really have.
We only like to talk about things that are impossible to describe.
Let's do it.
I'm wondering if, to get something a little tangible, is there anything that you have that you fall back on in these moments where things might not be working and you're just trying to get it back on track? Is there anything either from your experience or your experience creating your own content, or just things that work? Is there anything you fall back on just to sort of get you to a center and then go from there? Is there anything that works? Is there, or is that a dangerous ground to tread?
I don't know. I'm trying to think if that's something that, I definitely feel like I have to understand what I'm saying. There have been times where I'm trying to say something and it's not working, and I realize that it doesn't make sense. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to me, or it's just worded in a way that doesn't come out of my mouth correctly. And sometimes I'm not throwing the writer under the bus, but I say like, that doesn't feel right to say. I need to figure out how to say that differently. Or I don't like the way that's written because it's not making sense. And when it's not making sense, I can pretend all I want that it's making sense, but if I don't believe it, like how the hell is anybody else going to believe it, I'm sure some people can, and people can deliver that kind of performance, but I have noticed that when I'm really trying to like learn my lines and I'm tripping up on something, it doesn't make sense to me. And that's when I usually have to go, wait a minute, why isn't this making sense? Okay, can I say it this way? And then it flows more freely. But that's just one way of answering your question, because I know there's other ways of looking at that. But that definitely is one thing I've noticed, like, this doesn't make sense. Okay. And that's very easy because, things get written and rewritten, or people write things with different mannerisms or different ways of speaking that are completely foreign to me, or something I would never say, or doesn't feel like it flows freely. So all different reasons why.
I want to ask you about, just one or two specific moments from Loot season 2, just sort of get an idea of what it's like on the day, to maybe put like an image to what we're talking about here, just sort of how you get these things done. Something that I found very funny from season 2 is I think it's the opening of the season, is that 73 questions with Molly. And it's something, again, where it all really, there's a lot of it that sort of depends on, you're just saying answers, but they're funny because the way you're saying them, or you're funny because the way they're said, the only the 5 with the pools and stuff like that. How much of that, something like that, where it's going to end up as a montage, is just trying things. It's just trying up, down, different pitch, different tones, or are you sort of aiming for something specific?
I don't know that I've thought about it that way. I mean, that one was so specific because I was trying to put on that affectation of, I seem calm, but I'm not. And it's pretty obvious because I don't know how to act, like that kind of a voice for that specifically. But that was just the fun in the game of it to me, just because I find those videos endlessly fun. I've never thought about it that way, I don't think. So I don't know. It's so weird that I don't know how to answer that, but I don't. It doesn't seem like something that's ever occurred to me, and which you're probably like, what are you talking about then? That's using like your human voice. But I guess I've never thought about it like that.
I feel like this is not a new occurrence for this kind of show. That answer kind of is illuminating because, I feel like a lot of people, when they're trying to become actors, become comedians, they're like, well, what do I have to think about? What is the steps? What is the thing? And to hear so many successful people at the top of their field sort of say like, well, I've never thought about it like that, I just do what I do, is always very illuminating, because I think it's just helpful to hear that. If there was an answer that is like, oh, well, I write down the equation and here are the results, then there would be many Maya Rudolphs, but there's only one.
Yeah, there's only one. I mean, I guess I think that's an interesting point, because I think that there is this idea that there is a formula to some of these things. I don't have one. I think you get into your own rhythms, and some things work for you and they sound familiar, or you get a certain familiar response and things like that. But if you ask me to tell you what those things were, I'd have no clue. And I think there is a testament to time and doing something for a while and finding comfort within that. But yeah, I don't think there is a formula. I mean, if I had to make that definition, I'd say there isn't one. And that probably is really disappointing for people to hear. They're like, but I need the formula. The thing. Like, yeah,
that sounds great, but give us the formula.
Yeah, there isn't one. But I'm sure that if I had to think about it, there is a personal thing going on that, like, is my own little equation. I'm unfamiliar with it. I just know when it feels right and when it doesn't.
Absolutely. So as we sort of, come to the end of this, I do want to ask just one more question based on something I saw you say in an interview recently, and it was just about, inspiration. I think you said inspiration is everything. Inspiration is you get where you are because you're inspired by people. I'm sure that you had, many North Stars early in your career and things like that. But is there any recent inspiration you found that was surprising to you? Anything that, like we said, all these years later, going back to SNL, doing stuff like Loot, staying at the top of your game. Is there anything that has been a more recent inspiration that has sort of brought some new revolution to this thing that you've been doing all these years?
I'm always inspired when I see a performance that makes me feel like I want to do that. I feel like I've now recognized it enough within my body where I realize like, oh, that's inspiration that you're feeling. Where if I'm watching a movie and I say like, I want to do that to myself, if I feel like I want to go there, that's usually inspiration. I really felt it in Barbie watching Ryan Gosling. That performance was so inspiring to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it because I just wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. And that I've recognized by now that greedy little desire to want to do something is inspiration for me, that this thing in my head that fantasizes that I can be something that I see is inspiration. And I love that it really doesn't require that I'm any particular gender thing. It's just the fun of that performance, and getting to play a character like that looked so fucking fun. And I just wanted to devour it, and I wanted to do it. And I found that at so many times in my life, seeing a movie that I loved or a band or a singer, but this was the most recent one where I just could not get enough. I loved it so much that it just really did it for me. And I found that and it's refreshing to me, because it makes me realize, because sometimes I get bummed out that I'm not as inspired as I'd like to be all the time. Sometimes I feel like things aren't as good as they should be, or there's not enough care in things as there can be. And I love to be inspired. I feel like it's the fuel that drives all of us, that exciting element that makes you want to go out and do it. It's like you were saying, like being driven. I think the drive for me is just wanting to get to do the thing. So yeah, that was the most recent one that I have not, that's still sparkling for me. I was like, hands down, one of the best performances I've seen in years. But it just looked so fun to do. Like, I want to do that.
Absolutely. Maya, thank you so much. This was fascinating. We went to some very philosophical places.
We went deep. And I really appreciated you being there for me, and I was there for you.
Of course. So. And I felt that. And I would love to speak again down the road. We'll get to some firm answers. But for now, this was fascinating. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, as always, to our brilliant producer, Jamie Muffett, and to the whole team at Backstage. Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage with code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. 100% free, you simply cannot beat that. For more exclusive content, find us on Facebook and Twitter at In The Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who should we interview next? Let us know. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another peek in the envelope.